Henderson Field, Guadalcanal. 10 minutes before midnight, Private Robert Young Deere grips his M1 Garand in the tropical darkness, part of the 164th Infantry Regiment that landed just 11 days ago. They're the first Army unit committed to offensive combat against Japan. Beside them, Marines clutch their bolt-action Springfields while the soldiers hold semi-automatic weapons, 8 cartridges ready in each unblock clip. Then it begins. Through the humid night air comes the terrifying roar of thousands of Japanese troops charging forward, their battle cries echoing across the jungle. Among them, Lieutenant Kenji Yamamoto advances with his Type 38 Arisaka, its exceptionally long barrel catching on vegetation. The 5-round magazine requires him to manually cycle the bolt after each shot. Up, back, forward, down. Behind him, troops carry the newer Type 99 in a larger caliber, but it's still bolt action, still limited to 5 rounds. The next 12 hours of brutal fighting will prove why American infantry held such a devastating advantage in firepower. The technological divide between semi-automatic and bolt-action rifles would prove as critical as any battlefield strategy. This battle will reveal a harsh reality of the Pacific War. While Japanese soldiers fought with extraordinary bravery, they carried rifle technology from the previous generation. The M1 semi-automatic mechanism, 8-round capacity, and powerful 30-06 cartridge gave American forces a rate of fire that Japanese infantry simply couldn't equal. This firepower gap, repeated across thousands of battles from New Guinea's jungles to Iwo Jima's volcanic sand, contributed decisively to the Allied triumph. The M1 Garand came from the mind of Canadian-American engineer John Garand, who joined Springfield Armory in 1919. After 17 years of development, the U.S. Army adopted his design in January 1936, making America the first nation to issue semi-automatic rifles as standard infantry equipment. The rifle fired the 30-06 Springfield cartridge, propelling a 150-grain projectile at nearly 2,900 feet per second from its 24-inch barrel, generating over 2,600 foot-pounds of energy. Garand's brilliance lay in the gas-operated rotating bolt mechanism. Propellant gas tapped near the muzzle drove an operating rod that cycled the action automatically. Each trigger pull fired 1 round, with gas pressure ejecting the spent casing and chambering the next without any manual operation. A trained rifleman could fire 40 to 50 accurate shots per minute, compared to 15 to 20 with a bolt action. The 8-round clip could be inserted in under 3 seconds. Development hadn't been smooth. Early versions used an unreliable primer system. Originally designed for the 27.6 Pedersen cartridge, General MacArthur's 1932 intervention mandated the 30-06 to use existing ammunition stocks. Though this delayed production, it proved fortunate. The powerful cartridge delivered excellent range and stopping power. The Arisaka rifles descended from Colonel Narikira Arisaka's 1897 Type 30 design, replacing inadequate earlier rifles. By the Second World War, Japanese forces primarily used 2 versions, the Type 38 from 1905 and the Type 99 introduced in 1939. The Type 38 fired a 6.5mm semi-rimmed cartridge with modest energy output. The Type 99 used a more powerful 7.7mm round with better performance, but both were bolt action with 5-round internal magazines loaded via stripper clips. The Type 38's remarkable 31.4-inch barrel made it one of the history's longest infantry rifles, providing excellent long-range accuracy but proving extraordinarily awkward in jungle fighting, where visibility rarely exceeded 100 yards. The Type 99's shorter barrel was more practical, but arrived too late for widespread adoption. The Arisaka action itself proved remarkably robust. Post-war testing showed it stronger than American, British, or German designs. It featured silent safety operation and a gas escape system for shooter protection. Yet these engineering achievements couldn't overcome the fundamental limitation of manual bolt operation in an age of increasing firepower. The industrial contrast between America and Japan becomes stark in production numbers. Between 1936 and 1945, American factories produced approximately 5.4 million M1 Garands. Springfield Armory manufactured 3.5 million, Winchester added over 500,000 more. By January 1944, Springfield reached 1,000 rifles daily, Winchester 600. This massive output ensured virtually every American infantry soldier and Marine carried the semi-automatic rifle by mid-1943. Japanese production tells a different story. From 1905 to 1945, Japan manufactured roughly 3 million Type 38 rifles across multiple arsenals. Type 99 production from 1939 to 1945 reached approximately 3.5 million units. Despite these substantial numbers totaling over 6 million rifles, Japan never achieved the production rates needed to fully modernize their infantry arms. Many second-line troops still carried Type 38 rifles at war's end, creating logistical complications with two different ammunition types. American M1 production maintained remarkably consistent quality. Springfield Armory rejected any rifle failing to group within 5 inches at 100 yards. Parts interchangeability between manufacturers was strictly enforced. A damaged rifle could be repaired using components from any other M1. Improved heat treatment processes in 1942 actually increased receiver strength over pre-war production. The shift from blued steel to parkerizing improved corrosion resistance in tropical climates. Walnut stocks gave way to birch due to shortages, but functionality never suffered. Japanese manufacturing quality deteriorated markedly as the war progressed. Early Type 99 rifles featured remarkable innovations: chrome-lined barrels, actually the first military rifle with this feature, anti-aircraft sights for aerial targets, dust covers, and integral monopods. The finish was deep blue, stocks crafted from quality hardwood. By 1944, these refinements vanished under production pressure. Late war rifles showed rough machining, simplified sights, wooden butt plates replacing metal, inferior wood with poor fitting. Some final rifles lacked even basic finishing. Chrome lining disappeared, monopods were eliminated, even the imperial chrysanthemum marking became crudely stamped. The M1 semi-automatic action provided advantages beyond simple firing rate. After each shot, the soldier maintained his sight picture and cheek position while the rifle cycled automatically, meaning faster target reacquisition and more accurate follow-up shots. The operating rods functioned reliably even when fouled with mud, sand, volcanic ash, or carbon buildup. The N-block clip system, sometimes criticized for its distinctive ejection ping, allegedly alerting enemies to an empty rifle, actually provided the fastest reload of any contemporary military rifle, under 3 seconds versus 5 to 7 for skilled bolt-action users. Clip ejection also provided immediate confirmation the rifle was empty, preventing confusion. The M1's 9.5-pound weight helped manage substantial recoil, enabling rapid, accurate follow-ups. Its 43.6-inch length was well balanced between heavy barrel and solid stock. The two-stage military trigger provided consistent performance soldiers could master with training. The Arisaka rifles, despite robust construction and theoretical accuracy, suffered from inherent bolt-action limitations that became critical in Pacific combat. After each shot, the soldier manually cycled the bolt through 4 distinct movements, breaking firing position, disrupting sight alignment, requiring 2 to 3 seconds even for well-trained troops. The Type 38's extreme 50.3-inch length proved particularly unsuitable for jungle warfare. Rifles caught on vines were difficult to swing onto targets in dense vegetation, nearly impossible to use in bunkers or fortified positions. The long barrel's excellent long-range accuracy became a liability when combat ranges rarely exceeded 100 yards. The 5-round capacity meant Japanese soldiers reloaded 60% more often than Americans to fire equivalent rounds. Loading via stripper clips required opening the bolt, positioning the clip correctly, pressing rounds into the magazine, withdrawing the clip, closing the bolt, a process taking 5 to 7 seconds under ideal conditions, much longer under combat stress.
The .30-06 Springfield cartridge was already standard throughout the U.S. military for the Springfield rifle, M1917 Browning machine gun, M1919 Browning, and Browning automatic rifle. This commonality simplified logistics immensely. A single ammunition type supplied rifles, automatic rifles, and machine guns. American ammunition production was staggering. Lake City Army Ammunition Plant alone could produce 200 million rounds annually by 1943. Quality control ensured consistent ballistics, with velocity variation under 40 feet per second between production lots. Japanese forces faced more complex ammunition logistics. Units with Type 38 rifles required 6.5mm semi-rimmed ammunition, while Type 99 units needed 7.7mm rounds. The 6.5mm round generated less recoil and allowed carrying more ammunition, but proved inadequate against covered positions and lacked stopping power. The 7.7mm round addressed these deficiencies, but created dual supply requirements. Documented instances include the 23rd Infantry Regiment on Guadalcanal receiving 7.7mm ammunition for their Type 38 rifles, rendering both weapons and ammunition useless. Similar mix-ups occurred during the Philippines campaign and on isolated island garrisons. When the Army's 164th Infantry Regiment arrived at Guadalcanal on October 13, 1942, they brought something the Marines desperately wanted: M1 Garand rifles. Marines, still armed primarily with bolt-action Springfields, watched with mixed envy and skepticism as Army soldiers unloaded their semi-automatic weapons. During the climactic battle for Henderson Field on October 24th and 25th, the advantages became undeniable. Private First Class James Cass of Company M later recalled the Japanese charging in waves, barely visible except for glinting bayonets. With their Garands, they could fire 8 rounds before the enemy covered 30 yards. Each man functioned like a machine gun section. They'd fire, the rifle would cycle automatically, and they'd fire again. No working a bolt, no breaking sight picture. Just squeeze, fire, 8 times before reloading. The 164th Company's reinforced Marine positions beginning to buckle under Japanese assault. The devastating semi-automatic fire from fresh Army troops helped stabilize the line. Colonel Bryant Moore reported his men expended over 250,000 rounds of .30 caliber ammunition in the two-day battle. Japanese casualties stacked up in front of 164th positions, many killed by rapid, accurate M1 fire. Marine Private Robert Leckie, who would later write "Helmet for My Pillow," observed the Army troops in action. They thought the soldiers were inexperienced, carrying newfangled rifles, but when the Japanese charged, those Garands spoke with unprecedented voice, a continuous roar, not the sporadic crack of Springfields. Sergeant Masao Watanabe of the 29th Infantry Regiment survived the October offensive. In his post-war memoir discovered in Japanese military archives, he wrote they were told Americans were soft, that Japanese spirit would overcome material advantages. Officers assured them 1 Japanese soldier equaled 10 Americans. But charging American lines that October night felt like running into a wall of lead. Every American soldier seemed to possess an automatic weapon. Their Arisaka rifles, operated the same way their fathers had in the Russo-Japanese War, felt like antiques. They'd fire once, work the bolt while taking cover, then fire again. In that same time, Americans had already fired 4 or 5 rounds. Watanabe noted tactics developed against Chinese forces, often poorly equipped, proved suicidal against American firepower that never seemed to stop firing. They couldn't get close enough for bayonets. Their supposed advantage in spirit and close combat meant nothing when they were shot down 50 meters from American lines. Lieutenant Hiroshi Takahashi of the 230th Infantry Regiment provided another perspective in a letter found on his body. The American automatic rifles were devastating. Each soldier could fire as fast as their light machine guns. When they advanced, it sounded like attacking a position defended entirely by machine guns. Their men fell before working rifle bolts for a second shot. At Cape Gloucester in December 1943, Marines of the 1st Division, now fully equipped with M1 Garands after their Guadalcanal experience, landed in torrential rain on Newberton. Private First Class Eugene Sledge, author of With the Old Breed, later wrote the Garand was their most reliable equipment. In rain like waterfalls, in mud like quicksand, that rifle kept firing. The Japanese with bolt action couldn't match their rate of fire. When they tried establishing jungle positions, Americans could put so much lead into the trees that leaves fell like rain. Marine Sergeant John Basilone, who had earned the Medal of Honor on Guadalcanal primarily for machine gun actions, also carried an M1 as his personal weapon. He noted the Garand gave every Marine the firepower of 3 men with bolt actions. In jungle, where you might glimpse the enemy for seconds, firing multiple shots without working a bolt meant the difference between killing him or him escaping to kill you later. During the Battle of Saipan in June 1944, the largest banzai charge of the Pacific War saw over 3,000 Japanese soldiers assault American lines in a desperate pre-dawn attack on July 7th. Private First Class Harold Agerholm of the 4th Marine Division, armed with his M1, helped repel the massive assault. Corporal John Miller recalled the Japanese coming shoulder to shoulder, screaming. Their Garands never stopped firing. As fast as they could pull triggers, they fired. The ping of empty clips ejecting was constant, like deadly music. The Japanese with bolt action couldn't match their volume of fire. They'd get 1 shot off, maybe 2 if lucky, before semi-autos cut them down. On Peleliu in September 1944, the 1st Marine Division faced Japanese forces who had learned from their earlier defeats. Instead of banzai charges, they defended from fortified positions. But even defensively, the bolt-action Arisaka proved inferior. Marine Corporal R.V. Burgeon recalled when they spotted a position, they could saturate it with rifle fire. 4 or 5 men with Garands could put 40 rounds into a cave mouth in the time it took the enemy to fire 5 or 6 shots back. They'd keep their heads down while other Marines maneuvered with flamethrowers or demolitions. American training doctrine emphasized exploiting the M1's semi-automatic capability while maintaining accuracy. At training camps across the United States, soldiers spent weeks mastering their rifles. Standard qualification required engaging targets from 100 to 500 yards, with emphasis on rapid target engagement and smooth trigger control. Army field manuals specified soldiers should achieve 40 to 50 aimed shots per minute in combat. Training emphasized maintaining sight picture between shots, since semi-automatic action didn't require breaking position. Soldiers learned to fire, observe impact, adjust, and re-engage quickly.
Ammunition allocation for training was generous. Basic trainees fired minimum 210 rounds during qualification, with additional ammunition for advanced training. Combat units preparing for deployment often fired thousands of rounds per soldier. This extensive live-fire training built muscle memory and confidence, proving invaluable in combat. The Marine Corps, initially skeptical about the M1 due to concerns about ammunition waste and degraded marksmanship standards, eventually developed even more intensive training programs. Marine doctrine emphasized accurate volume of fire, not spray and pray, but rapid aimed shots exploiting the M1's semi-automatic action while maintaining the Corps' traditional marksmanship excellence. Japanese marksmanship training, rooted in samurai traditions, emphasized one-shot, one-kill philosophy. This principle reflected both spiritual beliefs about warrior focus and practical bolt action limitations. Japanese soldiers underwent extensive long-range training, with the Type 38's exceptional distance accuracy considered primary virtue. The Imperial Army's training manual stated, "The spirit of attack must be the infantry's primary weapon. The rifle and bayonet were merely extensions of a warrior's will." This emphasis on spiritual over material factors proved catastrophic against American firepower. Japanese soldiers trained extensively in bayonet fighting, with daily practice. The Type 38's exceptional length made it theoretically superior in bayonet combat. However, Pacific combat rarely offered the clear long-range shots for which Japanese soldiers trained. Jungle terrain limited visibility to mere yards. Banzai charges that succeeded against poorly equipped Chinese forces met devastating failure against semi-automatic rifle fire. The sound of massed M1 fire became a psychological weapon. The rapid, rhythmic crack of semi-automatic fire, punctuated by the distinctive metallic ping of ejecting clips, had demoralizing effect on Japanese forces. A captured Japanese training document from 1943 instructed soldiers the American automatic rifles create sound like many machine guns firing. Don't be discouraged by this volume. Remember your spiritual superiority and press forward with determination. However, spiritual superiority proved inadequate against material reality. Japanese soldier Yukio Nakamura, captured on Saipan, told interrogators they were told Americans were cowards, relying on machines instead of warrior spirit. But their rifles that fired without stopping, it was like fighting machines, not men.
Officers told them to charge with bayonets, but they were cut down before getting close enough to use them. Conversely, American troops gained immense confidence from their firepower advantage. Marine Corporal James Russell recalled, "Knowing you could put 8 rounds downrange as fast as you could pull the trigger made you feel invincible. When the Japanese charged, you didn't panic, you just started shooting and kept shooting until they stopped coming or you heard that ping telling you to reload." At squad level, the M1's advantage became more pronounced. An American rifle squad of 12 men, with 10 M1 Garands and 2 Browning automatic rifles, could deliver 400 to 500 aimed rounds per minute in sustained fire. A comparable Japanese squad with Arisakas might manage 150 to 180 rounds per minute, assuming well-trained soldiers at maximum bolt-action speed. This disparity fundamentally altered small unit tactics. American squads could effectively conduct fire and maneuver, with one fire team laying suppressive fire while another advanced. The volume of accurate semi-automatic fire could keep enemy heads down, allowing American forces to close with and destroy Japanese positions. Japanese squads, limited by bolt actions, struggled to generate sufficient suppressive fire while maintaining mobility. At company level, the difference became overwhelming. An American rifle company could deliver devastating defensive fire against Japanese attacks. During the October 24th to 25th Battle for Henderson Field, Companies G of the 164th Infantry demonstrated this capability. Company G reported expending 30,000 rounds of .30-06 ammunition in one night of fighting, an average of 150 rounds per man, while suffering only light casualties. The mathematics were inexorable. A Japanese battalion of 800 men conducting a banzai charge faced American companies capable of putting 8,000 aimed rounds downrange per minute. Even accounting for darkness, confusion, and fear, the volume of semi-automatic fire created kill zones that human courage alone couldn't overcome. The M1 superiority contributed directly to American island hopping strategy's success. American forces could land on Japanese-held islands confident in their ability to establish and hold beachheads against counterattacks. The firepower of M1-equipped infantry meant smaller forces could hold larger perimeters, allowing rapid buildup for breakout operations. On island after island, Tarawa, Kwajalein, Eniwetok, Saipan, Guam, Peleliu, Iwo Jima, Okinawa, the pattern repeated. Japanese forces unable to match American firepower resorted to increasingly desperate tactics. Banzai charges gave way to defense in depth. But even in fortified positions, the slow rate of bolt-action fire meant Japanese soldiers could rarely exploit opportunities when Americans exposed themselves during assault. The Japanese military's retention of bolt-action rifles stemmed significantly from their victory in the Russo-Japanese War of 1904 to 1905. In that conflict, Japanese infantry armed with Type 30 and Type 35 Arisakas had defeated Russian forces through superior training, discipline, and tactical innovation. The battles of Mukden and Siege of Port Arthur seemed to validate supremacy of Japanese warrior spirit over material factors. This success created institutional blindness to technological change. The Japanese military establishment, dominated by officers who revered the Russo-Japanese War as Japan's coming of age as a great power, failed to recognize warfare had fundamentally changed. World War I demonstrated the dominance of firepower over elan, but Japan, not having participated significantly in that conflict, failed to internalize its lessons. The American adoption of the M1 Garand reflected hard-learned lessons from World War I. General John J. Pershing, commander of the American Expeditionary Force, had witnessed the devastating effect of automatic weapons in France. In 1918, he specifically called for the development of a semi-automatic rifle, stating the soldier who can deliver the most accurate fire in the shortest time will dominate future battlefields. This requirement launched the development process culminating in the M1 Garand. The United States spent nearly 2 decades perfecting the design, conducting extensive trials, and building industrial infrastructure for mass production. By 1936, when the M1 was adopted, America had not just created a superior rifle, but an entire system for producing, maintaining, and supplying it. The Japanese did eventually recognize the need for semi-automatic rifles. Development of indigenous designs began in the 1930s, including the Type Ko rifle designed by Kijiro Nambu and several gas-operated prototypes. However, these efforts received low priority, with resources directed towards aircraft, naval vessels, and other programs deemed more critical. Most tellingly, when the Japanese finally attempted to copy the M1 Garand as the Type 4 rifle, they managed to produce only 250 part sets, with approximately 100 to 125 rifles actually assembled before war's end. The Type 4, chambered for 7.7mm Japanese ammunition and fed from a 10-round internal magazine loaded with two 5-round stripper clips, proved that Japan understood the M1's advantages but lacked industrial capacity for mass production. The mathematics of firepower revealed overwhelming American advantage. The M1 Garand firing standard ball ammunition delivered over 2,600 foot-pounds of energy at the muzzle. With a trained soldier firing 40 rounds per minute, this translated to over 106,000 foot-pounds of energy per minute. A bolt-action Type 99 Arisaka, firing the 7.7mm round with 2,300 foot-pounds per shot at a practical rate of 15 rounds per minute, delivered only 34,500 foot-pounds per minute, less than one-third the M1's energy output.
The 30-06's trajectory, while having more drop than the 6.5mm Arisaka at extreme range, proved superior at typical Pacific combat distances. At 300 yards, an unusually long engagement distance in jungle warfare, the 30-06 dropped 13.5 inches from line of sight while retaining 1,900 foot-pounds of energy, sufficient to penetrate multiple layers of jungle vegetation and still incapacitate enemy soldiers. The 6.5mm Arisaka, while dropping only 11 inches at the same range, retained only 1,100 foot-pounds of energy, often insufficient to penetrate cover. U.S. Army ordnance tests conducted at Aberdeen Proving Ground in 1940 quantified the M1's advantage. In controlled trials, soldiers with M1 Garands consistently achieved 24 aim shots per minute at 200 yards, with 90% hits on man-sized targets. Soldiers with Springfield bolt actions, functionally identical to Arisaka operation, managed only 10 aimed shots with 85% accuracy. In rapid-fire scenarios simulating response to sudden attack, M1-equipped soldiers could engage 3 separate targets in the time bolt-action users engaged 1. Further testing examined sustained fire over longer periods. After 5 minutes of continuous firing, M1-equipped soldiers maintained 80% of their initial rate of fire, while bolt-action users dropped to 60% due to fatigue from working the bolt. The M1's semi-automatic operation required only trigger finger movement, while bolt-action operation demanded gross motor movements of entire arm and shoulder. Combat statistics from Pacific battles revealed telling patterns. At Guadalcanal, Army units equipped with M1 Garands expended an average of 150 to 200 rounds per man per day of heavy combat. Marine units still equipped with Springfield rifles expended 60 to 80 rounds per man in similar conditions. This didn't represent ammunition waste, but rather the M1's ability to deliver effective fire at fleeting targets. Japanese forces rarely expended more than 40 to 50 rounds per man per day, limited by both ammunition supply and mechanical constraints of bolt-action operation. Captured Japanese after-action reports frequently cited ammunition shortages, but even when ammunition was available, the slow rate of bolt-action fire limited consumption. Japanese military documents captured throughout the war revealed increasing awareness of American firepower superiority. A report from Lieutenant General Harukichi Hakutake, commanding the 17th Army on Guadalcanal, stated in November 1942 that enemy rifle fire has density and accuracy beyond expectations. Each enemy soldier appears armed with an automatic weapon. Their forces cannot achieve fire superiority even with numerical advantage. He recommended emphasis on night operations and infiltration tactics to negate enemy firepower advantage. By 1944, Japanese tactical doctrine had evolved to acknowledge American material superiority. Instructions for the decisive battle issued to defenders of the Mariana Islands stated the enemy's automatic rifles and machine guns create an impenetrable wall of fire during daylight hours. All attacks must be conducted at night or under cover of adverse weather. Daytime movement invites annihilation. Lieutenant General Tadamichi Kurubayashi, the brilliant defender of Iwo Jima, wrote in January 1945 that the American automatic rifles are remarkable weapons. Each soldier possesses firepower equal to 3 or 4 of our riflemen. They must not waste lives in futile banzai charges against such firepower. Instead, they will make Americans pay for every meter of ground from fortified positions. His defensive strategy, avoiding suicidal charges in favor of defense in depth,
prolonged the battle but could not overcome American material superiority. The Japanese made several attempts to increase infantry firepower. The Type 100 submachine gun, introduced in 1942, was intended to provide automatic fire capability. However, production reached only about 27,000 units by war's end, insufficient to make a strategic difference. The weapon also fired the relatively weak 8mm Nambu pistol cartridge, lacking the range and stopping power needed for Pacific combat. More revealing was the Japanese effort to copy the M1 Garand itself. When American forces captured Yokosuka Naval Arsenal in 1945, they discovered the Type 4 rifle program. Engineers at Yokosuka had reverse-engineered captured M1 Garands, modifying the design to use Japanese 7.7mm ammunition and feed from a 10-round internal magazine loaded with standard 5-round stripper clips. The Japanese had even improved certain aspects using a rubber recoil pad and adding a last-round bolt hold-open feature. However, Japanese industry proved incapable of mass-producing this complex design. While they had manufactured parts for approximately 250 rifles, only 100 to 125 had been assembled into complete weapons. The Type 4 program revealed that Japanese military engineers fully understood the M1's advantages, but lacked industrial infrastructure to produce it in meaningful numbers. Beyond industrial limitations, Japanese military culture resisted emphasizing material factors over spiritual ones. Colonel Masanobu Tsuji, a staff officer who served in multiple theaters, wrote after the war they knew Americans had superior weapons, but to acknowledge this openly would have destroyed troop morale. They had to maintain belief in spiritual superiority, even as soldiers were mown down by American automatic weapons. This cultural resistance extended to training. Even as late as 1944, Japanese infantry training emphasized bayonet practice and night infiltration over marksmanship. The official infantry manual devoted 3 pages to rifle marksmanship, but 12 pages to spiritual preparation and bayonet fighting. This imbalance reflected deep-seated beliefs about warfare's nature that technical realities couldn't easily overturn. The Battle of Okinawa, April through June 1945, provided the ultimate test of American firepower versus Japanese determination. Here on Japan's doorstep, 180,000 American troops faced 120,000 Japanese defenders in what would become the bloodiest Pacific battle. The Japanese, under Lieutenant General Mitsuru Ushijima, had learned from previous defeats. Instead of wasteful banzai charges, they prepared elaborate defensive positions in Okinawa's rocky terrain. Yet even in defense, bolt-action rifle limitations proved critical. When American forces advanced, Japanese defenders armed with Arisakas could rarely deliver sufficient volume of fire to stop them. Private First Class Desmond Doss, the conscientious objector medic who would receive the Medal of Honor, later described the sound of American rifles supporting his rescue efforts. The Garands were firing so fast it sounded like one continuous roar. Their boys could keep Japanese heads down while I went out for wounded. If they all had bolt-action rifles like the Japanese, I never could have saved those men. On May 4, 1945, the Japanese launched their only major counteroffensive of the battle. 5,000 Japanese soldiers attacked American lines in a coordinated assault designed to break through to American rear areas. The attack began at 4:30 a.m. with the largest artillery barrage Japanese forces had managed in the Pacific War, 12,000 rounds in 30 minutes. As Japanese infantry emerged from positions and charged across open ground, they met a wall of American fire.
Private First Class Martin Brennan of the 77th Infantry Regiment recalled they came at them in waves, but not the wild banzai charges they'd seen before. These were organized attacks with fire support, but their Garands never stopped firing. 8 shots, ping, reload. 8 more shots. The noise was incredible. The Japanese with bolt actions would fire once, maybe twice, then their semi-auto fire would cut them down. The attack shattered against American firepower with horrific Japanese losses. 4,000 dead versus 714 American casualties. The rapid fire of thousands of M1 Garands supported by automatic weapons and artillery created killing fields where Japanese courage could not overcome material disadvantage. Even when Japanese soldiers reached American lines, the close-range firepower advantage of semi-automatic rifles proved decisive. Sergeant William Manchester, who would later become a renowned historian, fought on Okinawa with the 29th Marines. He wrote the M1 rifle was their best friend. In the chaos of close combat, being able to fire 8 times without working a bolt saved countless American lives. He saw Japanese soldiers trying to work their bolt actions while under fire, hands shaking, fumbling with the mechanism, while American boys simply kept pulling triggers. Planning for Operation Downfall, the invasion of Japan scheduled to begin with Operation Olympic in November 1945, assumed the M1 Garand would play a crucial role. Military planners studying casualty rates from Okinawa calculated that American forces would need massive firepower superiority to overcome expected Japanese resistance on the home islands. Production plans called for 500,000 replacement M1 rifles for the operation, with Springfield Armory and Winchester increasing production to a combined 2,000 rifles daily by August 1945. International Harvester was scheduled to begin production at a third facility. The ammunition requirement was staggering. Planners estimated needing 100 million rounds of .30-06 monthly for rifle use alone, testimony to the volume of fire expected from M1-equipped troops. Intelligence estimates suggested Japanese homeland defense would include 2.5 million Arisaka rifles in military hands, plus millions more distributed to civilian militia units. However, many were training rifles, obsolete models, or last-ditch single-shot weapons. The Type 99 substitute standard rifles being produced in 1945 were so crude that American intelligence questioned their safety for the user. American planners calculated each beach would require suppression of Japanese positions by naval gunfire and aerial bombardment, followed by assault troops whose M1 Garands will provide the volume of fire needed to overcome defenders. Studies of Pacific battles showed that American forces with semi-automatic rifles suffered 40% fewer casualties than projected for troops armed with bolt-action rifles in similar situations. The Japanese, recognizing their firepower disadvantage, planned to rely on suicide tactics, using civilians as human shields and close-quarters combat in urban areas where rifle advantages would be minimized. Secret Japanese plans discovered after the war revealed desperate measures: bamboo spears for civilians, suicide swimmers with explosive charges, and even programs to spread biological weapons. The Arisaka rifle, once the pride of the Imperial Army, had been relegated to just one component of desperate defense. The atomic bombings of Hiroshima and Nagasaki ended the war before Operation Downfall commenced. Post-war analysis suggested American casualties could have reached 500,000 to 1 million, with Japanese casualties in the millions. The M1 Garand's firepower advantage would have been crucial, but at a terrible cost in lives on both sides. The M1 Garand's success influenced military rifle development worldwide. The Soviet Union, which struggled with limited production of its SVT-40 semi-automatic rifle during World War II, developed the SKS carbine directly influenced by captured M1 Garands. China's Type 56 carbine was essentially a copy of the Soviet SKS. France developed the MAS-49, taking lessons from both the M1 and their own pre-war semi-automatic experiments. Even Britain, traditionally conservative in small arms adoption and satisfied with their Lee Enfield rifles during the war, began developing semi-automatic rifles immediately post-war. The Belgian FM-49, the Swiss STG-W57, and the Italian BM-59 all reflected lessons learned from America's semi-automatic success in World War II. The M1 Garand continued serving through the Korean War, where it again proved superior to bolt-action rifles used by Chinese and North Korean forces. In the early stages of that conflict, American forces in Korea, armed with M1 Garands and supported by automatic weapons, repeatedly stopped massive Chinese human wave attacks reminiscent of Japanese banzai charges. The rifle served until gradually replaced by the M14 in the late 1950s and early 1960s. In a remarkable historical irony, the United States equipped the newly formed Japanese self-defense forces with M1 Garand rifles in the 1950s. Japanese soldiers who had faced the weapon now trained with it, experiencing firsthand the firepower advantage their predecessors had faced. The JSDF received approximately 150,000 M1 Garands through American military assistance programs.
Japanese veterans interviewed in the 1960s consistently cited American firepower, particularly the M1 Garand, as a decisive factor in their defeat. Saburo Sakai, Japan's leading surviving fighter ace, stated they could match American courage, could match American tactics, but could never match American firepower. Every GI with his automatic rifle was worth 3 of their soldiers. Today, both the M1 Garand and Arisaka rifles are highly sought after for collectors, though for different reasons. The civilian marksmanship program has sold over 500,000 surplus M1 Garands to American citizens since its inception, making it one of the most common military collectibles. The rifle's distinctive ping has become iconic in popular culture, featured in countless war films, television shows, and video games. The M1's reputation as the greatest battle implement ever devised, General Patton's famous assessment, remains unchallenged among World War II infantry weapons. Modern shooting competitions still feature M1 Garand matches, with the rifle proving remarkably accurate even by contemporary standards. Japanese Arisaka rifles, particularly those with intact imperial chrysanthemum markings, are prized collectibles. The chrysanthemum, symbol of the emperor, was typically ground off rifles before surrender, making intact examples rare and valuable. Modern testing has proven the Arisaka action to be exceptionally strong, stronger even than the Mauser or Springfield actions. But this strength could not overcome the fundamental disadvantage of bolt-action operation. Interestingly, both rifles have seen combat in the 21st century. M1 Garands have appeared in conflicts in the Middle East, supplied decades ago through military aid programs. Arisaka rifles have been documented in use by insurgent forces in Afghanistan and Myanmar, testament to the durability of the design, even if tactically obsolete. Back on that October night at Henderson Field in 1942, as Private Robert Young Deere of the 164th Infantry Regiment and thousands of other American soldiers demonstrated the devastating effectiveness of semi-automatic rifle fire, they were proving a fundamental truth of modern warfare. Technological superiority, backed by industrial production, could determine battle outcomes regardless of human courage or determination. The M1 Garand delivered 40 to 50 aimed shots per minute versus the Arisaka's 15 to 20. 8 rounds before reloading versus 5. Semi-automatic operation versus manual bolt manipulation. Weight of fire that could stop a banzai charge in its tracks versus single shots requiring breaking sight picture to chamber the next round. These mathematical realities multiplied across millions of individual firefights from Guadalcanal to Okinawa helped determine the Pacific War's outcome.
Lieutenant Kenji Yamamoto, who led that charge on October 24, 1942, with his Type 38 Arisaka, did not survive to see the dawn. His rifle, with its exceptional accuracy and admirable construction, its smooth bolt action and strong receiver, could not overcome the wall of semi-automatic fire that met his attack. Found after the battle, his weapon had 3 rounds remaining in the magazine. He had managed to fire only twice while advancing 100 yards under concentrated fire of M1 Garands. Around him lay dozens of his soldiers, most with full or nearly full magazines in their Arisakas, having been cut down before they could effectively return fire. The story of the M1 Garand versus the Arisaka rifles ultimately tells a larger truth about World War II in the Pacific, that courage and determination, while admirable and necessary, could not overcome the arithmetic of firepower. The United States had produced 5.4 million M1 Garands by war's end, ensuring that virtually every American rifleman possessed semi-automatic firepower. Japan, despite producing over 6.5 million rifles total, never escaped the technological constraints of bolt-action operation, never could match the volume of aimed fire that semi-automatic rifles produced. General George S. Patton's assessment of the M1 Garand as the greatest battle implement ever devised was not hyperbole but mathematical fact. From the steaming jungles of Guadalcanal, where the rifle first proved its worth in American Army hands, to the volcanic ash of Iwo Jima, where Marines used it to break Japanese strongpoints,
From the monsoon-soaked horror of Cape Gloucester to the desperate urban combat anticipated for Japan itself, the M1 Garand proved itself as more than just a rifle. It was a war-winning weapon that gave American forces a decisive edge in the most brutal theater of the world's most terrible war. The distinctive ping of an ejecting en-bloc clip became the sound of American victory in the Pacific, a sound that meant 8 enemy soldiers would never reach American lines, a sound that meant another Japanese position had been suppressed, another island secured, another step taken toward Tokyo Bay. Against it, the bolt-action Arisaka, for all its virtues of strength and accuracy, was simply fighting the last war with the last war's technology. In the final analysis, the Pacific War was won not by any single weapon or battle, but by the cumulative effect of American industrial might and technological superiority. The M1 Garand stood as perhaps the most visible symbol of this advantage at the individual soldier level. Every GI or Marine with an M1 possessed the firepower of 3 enemy soldiers, an advantage that no amount of spiritual training or warrior tradition could overcome. The Japanese soldier, brave as he was, dedicated as he was, skilled as he was, could work his rifle bolt only so fast, and in modern war, rate of fire multiplied by accuracy equaled survival. The Arisaka rifles now rest in museums and private collections, respected for their quality and historical significance. The M1 Garand likewise has passed into history, though many still function perfectly on rifle ranges across America. But in their time, in the desperate struggle across the Pacific, one was clearly superior to the other. The semi-automatic rifle had made every American soldier a base of fire unto himself, and that advantage, multiplied across the vast expanses of the Pacific theater, helped ensure Allied victory. The last word belonged not to courage or spirit, but to the mechanical precision of gas-operated semi-automatic fire. 8 rounds, 1 pull of the trigger each, before that distinctive ping announced it was time to reload and continue the fight.